Hollywood is getting ready to throw itself a party tonight. It's time for the 65th Academy Awards. The movie industry's best and most popular and most glamorous figures will gather at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles to watch the never-ending Oscar ceremonies. For most of us, of course, the movies are just entertainment, and that's all. For Hollywood, the movies are big business, and winning an Oscar translates directly into dollars, lots of dollars. But there is still another way to look at film. Film can be an art form that reveals a lot about the society that produces it. Dr. Howard Suber of UCLA makes his living looking at film that way, and this morning he walks us through the Western, a genre brought back this season by Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, one of the films up for Best Picture.
Get 3 coffins ready.
One of these days, somebody in Hollywood is going to have this bright idea. They're going to make a Western. And these 2 guys are going to come down this lonely, deserted street with their guns in their holsters, ready to be pulled at the magic instant. And as they just about get to each other, one of them is going to raise his hands and say, "Wait a minute, this is silly. Let's submit this to binding arbitration." That's going to be one of the greatest flops in motion picture history. The Western exists in order to get you to the point where violence is justified.
I can't listen to any more of this. What's the matter with you people? Don't you remember when a decent woman couldn't walk down the street in broad daylight? Don't you remember when this wasn't a fit place to bring up a child?
One of the great cliches of Westerns is we got to make this a fit place for women and children. The Western, at its core, is about threats to society. We know as a society that there's a difference between a murderer and an executioner. The villain is the murderer. The hero is the executioner. The difference between the two is that society sanctions the one and not the other. The Western is so simple that it's easy to tell, it's easy to understand, it's the most primitive or basic form of storytelling that you could imagine. If you go back to the Greek myths, you could almost say they were Westerns. So whether you're talking about the Odyssey or the Iliad or the thousands of myths ever since, heroes tend to follow the movement of the sun. The opening of an incredible number of Westerns has the hero riding in from the right side of the frame. Films follow the tradition of maps. The right side is the east side.
Whoa! What river do you reckon that is?
The Red River, I think. If it is, that's Texas on the other side.
Ma'am, I sure like that name. Clementine.
The closing of an incredible number of Westerns has the hero riding off to the left of the screen. What's at the left? The west, the sunset. It's a cliche in a Western that the hero rides off into the sunset. But it's been a cliche in Western myth since the Odyssey and the Iliad. In our most memorable Westerns, the hero leaves, going off to some other community, maybe to fight the same drama once again. So at the end of High Noon, Gary Cooper, having saved the town, leaves it. At the end of Shane, Alan Ladd, having saved the town and the family that adopted him, leaves. At the end of The Searchers, John Wayne, having saved the remnants of his family, is forced to remain outside the door, scratching his arm, being alone. The historic pattern of the Western was the hero saves the community and then goes on west. That was American history. Once the hero couldn't go any further west, he had to die, as in The Wild Bunch, as in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. When the hero could no longer move westward, the hero was dead. When the Western could no longer move westward, the Western was dead.
How long has it been since you fired a gun at a man, Will? 9, 10 years?
11.
Had The Unforgiven been released around the same time as Shane and High Noon and the classic period of the Western, it would have been just another Western, and people would have said, that's nice. But since we haven't had a Western in so long, it now stands out as being something fresh and new. I don't think, however, that this marks the beginning of a new era of the Western. If Clint Eastwood gets the Academy Award for The Unforgiven, it won't be because the Western has come back. It's because Clint Eastwood has finally gotten his recognition from the Academy, and it happens to be in a Western.
This gentleman should have taught his brother better than to deal with a marked dick. Come to think of it, he's no gentleman at all. He's a son of a yellow-bellied sow.
The Western as a genre may be dead. The qualities and the conflicts that were embedded in the Western are very much alive. Many of those qualities in the Western simply moved over into science fiction films, such as Star Wars.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
Your droids, they'll have to wait outside. We don't want them here.
Let's wait out by the speeder. We don't want any trouble.
The new Michael Douglas film, Falling Down,
That's not our policy.
is a Western in an urban setting,
Something from the lunch menu.
with somebody being licensed to kill.
I don't want lunch. I want breakfast.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm really sorry, too.
We don't want to have lawyers resolve our conflicts. We don't want to submit our conflicts to binding arbitration. And as long as that's true, that final shootout at the end of the film, whether we call it a Western or not, is going to be one of the principal things that we go to movies for.